Join lifelong Star Wars fans Lauren and Steph as they dive into the world of Star Wars fan fiction, discussing a new fic each month, breaking down the writing style, characters, canon relationship, and more. This is your source for Star Wars fan fiction recommendations. So come on and find out why it's one hell of a fanfic.
Hey y'all, I'm Lauren, and welcome to One Hell of a Fanfic, where we talk about a new Star Wars fanfic every month. And tonight I'm here with Steph. How's it going, Steph?
Fantastic. We got so much snow. I mean, by so much, I mean like 4 or 5 inches over the last week, but it's great.
I mean, I'll take it. I mean, I feel like once Christmas is over, I need some magic to get me through. And snow definitely does that for me, at least. So that's
And then
exciting.
working from home, we don't have to actually like go in it. So,
Right. Yeah. Except then you get to a point where it's kind of like, okay, now I do want to go outside. At least that's how here it's been on the ground for so long that it's like, okay, we could do like a refresh. That would be kind of nice. So we'll see. This week we read, or this month, not this week, I guess technically this week, we read A New Adventure written by Carry On My Wayward Son of a Bitch, which love that name. That's great. Should we get into this one?
absolutely. So this one was finished back in 2020. There's about 6,700 words. There is spice level to this, very little. 1 out of 4. They talk about cuddling and they like hint that something at one point another time happened, and that's for another story.
Yeah.
So I'd put it as a 1.
There's history mentioned for sure.
This is canon divergent, right? That would make most sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And tropes?
Tropes, we have fix it and time travel. So this is a time travel fic, which we were mentioning last month how it was going to be interesting to see how the author approached this, because time travel is like one of those things that I feel like there's so many different ways it can be interpreted that everybody kind of puts their own spin on it.
We'll get into it later, how they actually did time travel. Let's see, what else is there? Oh, the author's summary. I guess that's next.
Yeah, so author summary, this is the blurb that they included at the beginning of the fic, which is, in which Obi-Wan travels back in time and neglects to tell anyone until an uneventful council meeting. Why do you think people should read this?
It is quick, easy enough to read. And it doesn't take itself too seriously. In fact, the author does not take the story seriously either.
Yeah, it kind of feels like an exploratory story where the author's kind of exploring the possibilities almost as they're putting them down. And that was one thing too, when like at the beginning of the chapter blurbs, you could tell that the author was publishing chapters as they were kind of getting it figured out, which I mean, that's something that's fun about fanfic, is that you can kind of, it gives you room to figure it out as you're going along. You don't have to have like a super polished, I don't know, big novel final draft. Like you can still be kind of figuring it out and posting it and getting people's feedback and posting more. So it kind of gives it room to evolve as the story goes along.
Some fanfic authors will have people that will like beta read them before posting them. But then other times, fanfic just gives you the freedom to explore something and to post whatever it is that you are writing and just see where it goes.
Yeah, and then it's like if there's some part of it that's like really resonating with people, then sometimes you can tell the author came back and wrote more based on that like feedback that they got, which is cool. So it's kind of like a collaborative process sometimes.
I did want to jump in there and say thank you to everyone who follows along with us. And if you are not following along, please do like and subscribe, and you'll get notified if you want of when we post things, which is only once a month. So it's not like we're posting a whole bunch, but it'll give you some fun recommendations of what to read next.
Okay, cool. So,
okay. Spoilers.
Yes, now we're going to start talking spoilers. So if you're thinking about reading this one and you don't want spoilers, now is your time to turn back. This story is written in the third person. I just want to throw that out there before I start giving my summary. But okay, so pretty much the way that this is written is I honestly kind of read it as a bunch of mini stories kind of pieced together, because there's a lot of jumping around. And the way I also interpreted that is Obi-Wan is time traveling, and it sounds like he's doing it quite a lot. It's never fully explained exactly how. It's just kind of like, as the reader, we just know that somehow he is doing this. And he's doing it a lot, and it almost sounds like at certain points, he himself is confused about what timeline he's currently in now. So the way that the stories are kind of like broken up into mini stories and then kind of pieced together, and sometimes it's hard to tell like what timeline we're in. I mean, Obi-Wan doesn't even know either. So that's just something you have to know going into this is the time travel confusion is evident, and it affects Obi-Wan too, the person doing the time traveling. So we open with a council meeting, and during the council meeting, Obi-Wan just like all of a sudden just spills the beans about Palpatine's plan. And the way that he says it is it's almost like he's bored. Like this is old news for him. And so to me, it sounded like he's been going back in time trying to get all this information and work this out for a while. So when he finally tells the council, like at this point, it's just like he has already been working on this for quite some time, that it's really not like interesting information anymore. But of course, the rest of the council is like, what the heck? Like, why did you just say that? And how do you know that? And later on, he does the same thing when he tells them that Grievous is dead. So he's been messing with a few things, it sounds like, during his time traveling. And we also have we see a little bit of some cameos from other prequel characters, some of them more present than others. One example of this that you mentioned earlier, Steph, is we do see Quinlan Vos, who, based on conversation with Obi-Wan, sounds like they had a history together. And Quinlan is trying to help Obi-Wan in some cases, but also like you get the sense that Quinlan and also some other people around Obi-Wan, they're just kind of confused about his behavior. Because it's like he seems to know some things that it's like, how do you know this? And he also seems to be pulling off like these crazy feats. Like there's one point where he has Maul, Ventress, and Sauvage. He just captures them all and just delivers them to the temple like it's nothing. And everyone's like, how did you do this? And I mean, you know, it sounds like the way he did it is he just like went back in time a bunch of times until he was able to just easily figure out where they were and just catch them. Another thing he messes with too is that he's trying to avoid Shmi getting killed. And the way that he does this is he keeps dropping hints to Anakin being like, maybe you should go to Tatooine. Like, I don't know, maybe see what's going on there. And Anakin's like, what are you talking about? Because, of course, that's not really in line with his training at the moment. But Obi-Wan, like, won't drop it. And he keeps saying that to Anakin until he does eventually go to Tatooine. We also have a crazy moment where Dooku shows up at the Jedi Temple. And the reason that happens is because, once again, with Obi-Wan doing this repetitive back and forth of going back in time to like mess with the timeline and try to fix it, he knows pretty much exactly what to say to Dooku to break Palpatine's influence. And what he says is, what do you think he's going to do with you once he like enacts his plan? Like, you think you're going to be around for that? And that apparently does have a big effect on Dooku, because he does show up at the Jedi Temple basically just like ready to return back, like nothing happened. So that was pretty unexpected. Then when we come to the end, this part made me laugh, and I was so happy because I caught this reference before the author even pointed it out. There's a conversation happening where Obi-Wan is questioning Sidious in front of a ton of people just about like what Sidious has been doing. And Obi-Wan fires off a bunch of questions. And then the last question is, and you've been a Sith Lord for how long? And then Palpatine's like 44 years or however long. And if you've seen Legally Blonde, you probably recognize this line of questioning that happens at the end of the movie. This is like pretty much exactly a scene from Legally Blonde. So when Obi-Wan did that to Sidious, I was like, oh my God, Legally Blonde reference. And then in the author notes, it was pointed out. So that made me laugh. But yeah, and then so that's pretty much all it takes to overthrow Sidious is Obi-Wan just like got the information, tricked Sidious, got him to admit it in front of tons of people, and then all the people murder Sidious. And then that's the end of Sidious. So
And it's fixed.
yeah, and it's fixed. And so that was pretty much, I would say that's like the main highlights of the story. There's some other little moments that we get and other little cameos and things that are kind of like dropped and like little Easter eggs and things like that. But I would say what I mentioned was probably like the main highlights.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So another thing to mention is that, like you said, there's these little snippets of things, and we don't really, there is no chronological timeline. It does seem like the author did try to go back and rearrange some things. Being a fanfic and being able to do that, go back and rearrange some things to try to put it in more chronological order, but I'm not sure. I was still very lost through most of it. Like, where are we and what are we doing?
Well, there
You
was
have
a
to have
note.
acknowledged. Was there?
Yeah, they did leave a note that said that they don't even know the order of the story.
Yes. It was very
So we're
helpful
all
that some
in
of the
that
notes.
boat.
Yes. Make
Yeah.
sure if you read the story to read the top notes at the beginning of each chapter, because some of them are like, and this happens directly before chapter 1. And then it's incredibly helpful to be able to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. I noticed that too. After a certain time, though, I was kind of like, okay, I'm just going to have the assumption that this timeline is all messed up because Obi-Wan keeps messing with the timeline and he doesn't even know what timeline he's in. So I guess if he doesn't even know, then I guess the reader doesn't have to know either.
That is a great way of looking at it.
Yeah. And then once I stopped trying to keep it straight, I had more fun with it.
Fair. Also to mention, there's 2 chapters, chapter 2 and 3. The author has it at the top. It says, these are not part of the story, but I guess they have another story that you could take and follow that timeline. So I was kind of taking that as an alternate reality that could have happened if Obi-Wan had followed a different, I don't know. I'm not sure why else it's in the story, but hey, it's in there. So you can't read it.
It kind of reminds me of how when a TV show is getting ready to do a spin-off of something, they'll have a random episode that's like, what is this episode about? And it's like, oh, I just realized this episode is like a teaser for the new spin-off show. Like,
Yes.
that's kind of what it
the feeling I
reminded
had.
me of. What reactions did you have as you were reading this?
I think outside of confusion of what in the world is going on, I was amused, but also like little things of, I like the way the author relayed how they're very in the moment with how they write. It's, this happened, then we looked at each other, then the other person looked at each other, and then this, and you get like a play by play, and you're very in the moment of what's happening. And they did a great job relaying that.
Yeah, you're not like bogged down with a bunch of like inner monologue.
No, it is straight to the point, action packed type of read.
Yeah. What did you think about the characters in this one?
They were very different than the characters that you'd see in canon. And from my perspective, at least, Mace, for example, I didn't understand that entire chapter of Mace, and I was like, that's not how I perceive him. But haven't read much on him anyway. But it was an interesting take on his view of the people around him.
Yeah, I see, and I actually did. It's funny you say that because that was actually probably my favorite part of the fic is when they were talking about the shatter points and how, just for anyone who's not familiar with shatter points, it's a force ability where you can see like all the different ways that something affects someone and sort of like a preview of all the different directions that they could go in as the result of a certain event. And so that's a force ability that Mace has. So I liked it that was mentioned because, I don't know. I mean, first of all, full disclaimer, I'm a Mace fan. I always want Mace to be mentioned more. So, like, I mean, that's pretty much like, you're going to sell me on anything that has more of Mace in it, honestly. So I really liked that. But I do agree with you about, like, he wasn't so harsh in this one like we see him in canon.
Yeah.
And I did like this interpretation of he has a lot of empathy for Obi-Wan and feels really awful for what Obi-Wan has gone through. I do like that as kind of like maybe a sort of explanation for why Mace is so harsh at times, especially against Anakin, is because if Mace feels terrible for Obi-Wan and is concerned about Obi-Wan and everything Obi-Wan's been through, and he has kind of like a preview of how Anakin is going to hurt Obi-Wan. I mean, you know, you could kind of see where that could be something that's a big concern of Mace's. I'm not saying he handled it in a great way, but but you can kind of see where he's coming from a little bit if you're going with that interpretation of things. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I actually didn't know anything about the shatter points. I had to like piece together what it could possibly mean. I was like, this has to be a Star Wars reference. I'm just not catching.
It's not mentioned a lot. So, and that's one of the things I'm always saying is I would like it if we could get more about Mace in canon, because I feel like there's so much about Mace that people just don't know because it's not mentioned that much in canon. Like the whole Shatterpoint thing is a good example of that. Like we get brief mentions of things, but not anything major. Like the Glass Abyss goes a lot more into his character in canon, but that just came out this past October, and that was like that was way overdue. So
Yeah.
I
Wow.
still want
I was like,
more.
I've not heard of that one.
Yeah, it's this novel. It's the novel that's behind me, the purple one.
Oh.
That's like the best canon info that we have on Mace. And it just came out. So
Oh.
that just goes to show how much, you know, we're lacking on Mace material in canon.
I'm gonna have to read that.
Yeah, it was really good. Highly recommend. But okay, but also in reference to what you were saying about the characters, I did notice that Obi-Wan in this fic, he was like that sassy Obi-Wan that we talked about. I think we just talked about this last month, didn't we? Like the sassy version of Obi-Wan.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I feel like in canon, we see a little sassy side. But one thing I think I'm starting to notice is that in fanfic, a lot of fanfic authors like to turn that up.
Oh, absolutely. He is both sassy and flirty in most fanfic.
Yeah. So that's fun.
He's not flirty in this one. In fact, he's trying to escape the flirtiness. But
with Quinlan.
yes. He's like, not now.
Yeah. Did you catch that Cody was his current boyfriend in this fanfic, though?
That was in the 2 chapters that were not part of.
Oh,
Not
so
technically
maybe
canon to this, because I got confused because at the very end, he's still cuddling with Voss. And I was like, wait a minute, what chapter was he dating Cody?
You're like, he better not be cheating on Cody. I know that. You had to go find the receipts. Yeah.
I did.
So I did think it was funny how just kind of like the implication that Obi-Wan has messed with time travel so much that he has confused himself in some ways. I liked that because to me, that makes a lot of sense. Like if you're jumping between timelines, that would be really hard to keep straight and to know what timeline you were in. It's not like there's like a sign that tells you.
Yeah.
So I liked that. I also liked how he is trying to fix the things that he can, but it's also like there's probably some things that he can't fix. Like you do see kind of like a little bit of an example of this when he's trying to get Anakin to go to Tatooine, and it's like he has a hard time getting the message through to Anakin that you need to do this. Oh, and the Legally Blonde reference that just had me excited. I love that movie so much, so when I saw that reference, I was like, that's a good one.
I didn't actually catch it until I haven't seen that movie in so many years.
You got to do a rewatch.
And we're gonna rewatch Twilight next weekend. It's gonna be the best.
Well, then Legally Blonde after that. Legally Blonde's going to be your next one.
Could you relate to any of the characters in this fanfic?
I would say I don't know if relate is the right word for this because I don't necessarily agree with everything this character does, But I was feeling for Mace with how concerned he was about Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's not really, I don't know, like everybody in canon, everybody's worried about Anakin, what's Anakin doing, like Anakin's influence, Anakin's behavior, but like people don't really worry about Obi-Wan that much, even though he was so young when Qui-Gon was killed.
And then he got a Padawan of his own and like had to
Yeah.
be a grown up.
And him and his Padawan got off to like a weird foot, just like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon did.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. Like, people should worry about Obi-Wan more.
Don't worry about him.
Yeah. Well, other Jedi in canon, I guess.
Oh.
So I did like it that was mentioned. What about you? Did you relate to any of them?
Well, as a mom, I related heavily to Obi-Wan in that entire scene about him trying to get Anakin to just go save his mother. And the increasingly heavy hints where he finally in the end Anakin wakes up with a note pinned to his chest saying, "Go save your mother and leave me alone." As a mother, that touched me.
You're like,
Do you know what
sometimes
it's
this
like to
is
try to
necessary.
convince a child to do anything? Like, make it their idea? It's not happening.
Yeah. Well, and he was trying to make it Anakin's idea too.
Right.
And
Because he
it
couldn't
was,
tell Anakin, like, "Hey, you need to go save your mom," because it is, like you said, it's against training. But at the same time, just
yeah.
go do the thing.
Did you have any theories about how exactly Obi-Wan was doing the time traveling?
No. And that's the point. That was the part that I was interested in seeing how they would handle and is how they were he was actually doing the time travel. And you know what? They didn't. And that's probably the best thing the author could have done. Not explain how time travel is happening because there's so much in Star Wars. You just don't want to like it's fanfic, so you can just make up whatever you want, but at the same time,
Mhm.
that wasn't the point of the story.
Yeah. The point of the story was more about like how is Obi-Wan handling this? What is it that he would be focusing on if he was time traveling? How would the other characters be reacting? That was really more of the point. The point wasn't really how could one time travel in the Star Wars universe?
Yeah. Do you have any theories?
Okay, so when I first this is gonna sound kind of ridiculous. When this first happened, I think it was mentioned that he would like go off by himself in his room and like not come out for a long time. And it kind of reminded me of okay, now I barely remember anything from Harry Potter because it's been so long, so I'm probably gonna totally like mess this up. But the thing in Harry Potter when Hermione has the
Time Turner.
hourglass neck, what was it?
Time Turner.
Time Turner. Okay.
I
My
got
Harry
you.
Potter knowledge is like blah, bad, bad, bad. So, but I do remember the scene of the Time Turner when she would be like um disappearing and then like reappearing in like weird moments and they'd be like, "Wait, what? Weren't you just like going that way?" And then I remember that kind of thing. And so I was like, is there like a Star Wars version of a Time Turner? That's what it made me think.
It's you know what? Yes. I'm gonna say yes, there is. I like it. Let's mix my
But
fandoms together. I like it. That's the next
yeah.
crossover.
Well, and yeah, we have had some successful crossovers that we've read. So, I mean, it's not really entirely out of the realm of possibility.
No, I love it.
I would
Let's
say
do that.
my other theory was going to be because I know, like, if we're trying to keep it canon, there's the world between worlds, but that seems like it would be so complicated to try to get to that and then time travel from that.
That's true. I don't know, because if you could just randomly accidentally find a door and then step through it, they had all of the circles of different spaces they can go back in time in.
Yeah.
But getting back in there. Yeah, I don't know. That is probably the way to do it. Oh,
Yeah. If
because I
we're,
guess we did have time travel in Star Wars already, like in canon.
yeah, but it's a slippery slope in
Yeah.
canon. So I understand why they don't pull that one out very much because I could see that just turning into a big old mess.
Yeah. You know what? Time travel in anything normally is. What did you think of that retelling of the Geonosis scene? That was my favorite one because it actually like stuck to canon ish, but like you could just get his internal monologue of, "Oh yes, this again. I'm just gonna go to sleep." Yes, yes, evil. Keep going.
Evil. And he's like saying the lines in his head.
Yes.
Yeah, that was funny. And he's like, you can tell he's done this so many times. It's not even upsetting to him anymore because he's just like, this is what we do now. I guess was it in that same scene again when he convinces Dooku to join the Jedi again?
I don't think so. I think it was a different scene because
It was a
right after,
different.
like he was like, you know, he was hanging above the ground, and Dooku's doing his bad guy monologue. Then he's like, "I'm just gonna go sleep." Goes to sleep and wakes up tied to the pillar with Anakin, and then notices that Padme's not there, and he's like, "Oh yes, things are starting to change." So he's starting to see the changes that he's making.
Okay, because I remember later on in the story, he has that another conversation with Dooku, but it must have been in a different
Yeah.
setting when he's like, "What do you think Sidious is going to do to you after he completes his plan?"
He's like, "Keep me around." He's like, "Yeah. Is that what he did last time? Is that what you did with your Padawan or whatever?"
Yeah,
And he's like, "Oh,
that was really dumb of Dooku to even think that. So
yeah." And
somebody
then
needed to say it.
yes. I liked at the end of whatever that chapter was, and he shows up, and the whole council's like, "What? Is there going to be another Sith Lord come through here?" And I was like, "No, no, not at all." And then either like the Duke of whatever the Duke, he's the Duke of like peeks in. He's like, "Oh, is this a
Dude,
bad
oh
time?" He's
my
like,
God. I'm sorry. I just hit the table because I was like gesturing excitedly. Okay. That scene had me laughing
"Yes,
when it's like, when Mace is like, what does he even say? He's like, am I going to open this door to find like a Sith Lord on the other side of it? God, I don't even remember exactly what he said, but the dialogue in that scene was so funny.
yes."
When this is okay, I guess to back up a little bit for anyone who hasn't read this, when Dooku is about to come back to the temple, this is after Obi-Wan convinced him to come back. And Obi-Wan is like breaking the news to the council in like a not very straightforward way. And they're like, what the heck are you talking about? And Mace is like so annoyed because, of course, this sounds like complete bonkers. Like, why would you bring him here? And just the way that the dialogue was handled in that scene, I just thought it was so funny.
I
And then
laughed.
he just like, they open the door and Dooku's like, okay, should I come back later? Just says something dumb. Like, okay, well, should we talk about what we're going to read next month?
I think so. You picked it. What are we reading?
Yes, we are reading Never Too Late by Blue Daddy's Girl. And in this one, speaking of Dooku, I guess, in this one, it is Obi-Wan asks Dooku for help right after Qui-Gon is killed. So pretty much like the way that the author summary made it sound is as soon as Qui-Gon is killed, that is the first call that Obi-Wan makes because of course Dooku was Qui-Gon's master. So in Obi-Wan's mind, that's who it would make the most sense to contact first. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out because you almost wonder if that would have changed Dooku's outcome at all.
So this one's going to be a bit more serious, where we've read quite a bit of silly ones.
Yes, we're going back to the serious times.
And eventually we'll get back to the spicy times.
And then the silly times again. Yes. Well, just as a reminder, we are on Instagram at One Hell of a Fanfic with a period in between every word. That's where we post whenever we have a new episode come out. And we are also on YouTube, which is also called One Hell of a Fanfic. And that is where we post our recordings, our video recordings that go along with our audio. And we're also on Tumblr as well at One Hell of a Fanfic. All right, cool. Well, we will see y'all next month. Thanks so much for joining us at One Hell of a Fanfic. On this podcast, we discuss Star Wars fan fiction, but we do not own the rights to Star Wars or any of the written works we cover. We have no affiliation with Lucasfilm or the fanfic authors we credit for their work. For questions, please email us at onehellofafanfic@gmail.com.